Can you believe in 1999 a video game came out that completely changed the world of sports games? On September 29th, 1999, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater would make its debut. This game would jumpstart a brand new video game franchise, becoming one of the most popular and best-selling of all time. In the end of the series would have 20 games in total with popularity across the world. The games were so popular due to the success and growth of celebrity Tony Hawk and the incredible gameplay. Before we dig deeper about the actual game, let's first take a look at why they became so popular. In the late 1990s, extreme sports began to grow across the country, becoming more mainstream. Coverage of the X Games by ESPN, which brought light to the sports like skateboarding, snowboarding, and biking. Due to this, it led to more kids wanting to participate in these sports and the sport looking for a face. The world of extreme sports found their face with Tony Hawk, who essentially became an extreme star in the late 90s. But by 1999, he would propel into superstardom when he would land the first ever 900. Hawk helped guide these sports into mainstream popularity, specifically the need and want to be a skateboarder, as he showed off how cool, awesome, and extreme people could become. The other thing that made Hawk unique was his openness and kindness. He would often talk to kids, sign autographs, and make himself openly available, making him more recognizable and approachable. Essentially, he was a perfect brand ambassador for the sport. But with extreme sports come safety concerns, and many parents did not want their kids participating in these games, which would open the door to extreme sports video games. The growing popularity and the need to fill a void for those kids who could ride, video game developers started to look into concepts. Sega had already developed a decently popular skateboard racing game called Top Skater in 1997, making it the first ever arcade game to feature a skateboard controller interface. However, bigger name developers saw more opportunity for growth in the field. In 1998, the actively growing video game creator Activision was looking to jump into this market, but they didn't want to use their own resources, so they approached small developer Neversoft. Originally, the game was supposed to be like that of Sega's. However, as time went on, Activision realized that Neversoft had more ability to develop than they originally thought due to the engine that they had. It is interesting to note the first game had been in development long before Hawk became the face of the franchise. But once seeing the growing popularity of him and the fact that he would often get airtime on televisions, they saw the potential into building the game further with Hawk. The game was very unique at the time because they actually used a half-pipe and motion capture technology to make the game as realistic as possible. The game was built by a 12-person team at Neversoft, making a very realistic skateboarding game for the time period. They also would add an incredible soundtrack full of unique modern rock music, which set the game apart from other video games during that time period. The Neversoft team expected the game to have some popularity, but never expected sales to be what they were. This was due to the fact that a month before the game was due to be released, Hawk would land the 900. Again, which would propel him, the sport, and now the brand new game into the mainstream. Hawk would be interviewed after completing the 900, and people would talk about him in the upcoming game. The game would ship in total $350,000 worth of units and would be available at over 10,000 retailers, making it one of the hottest games in 1999 for the holiday season. It was one of the main games that every kid wanted for their PlayStation. Due to the extreme popularity of the first game, Neversoft guaranteed that they would make the Tony Hawk game into the yearly franchise. Because of this, the Neversoft team would have to expand rapidly. Neversoft would release Pro Skater 2 in 2000 and Pro Skater 3 in 2001. Both of these games would continue to help grow the franchise further. Essentially, they were copies for gameplay as the original game, except having new locations and characters. Pro Skater 2 would also go into the Guinness Book of World Records for the best-selling extreme sports video game of all time, as there would be over 2 million copies sold in the United States alone, with anything coming outside the US being extra. Essentially, this game would solidify once again that the developers were on the same page about the popularity of Tony Hawk and the games. Pro Skater 3 was also extremely unique due to the fact that it was the first of the games to allow online play through the PS2. Neversoft would then enter the world of Xbox in 2001 by releasing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2X, which was essentially a copy of the first two games made for Xbox. By the time Pro Skater 4 came out, the teams at Activision and Neversoft both grew and invested even more into the franchise. The team working on the project went from 12 in the first game to now over 150 employees. The popularity of the original 4 Tony Hawk games allowed Activision and Neversoft to begin to think outside the box. Joel Jewett, the president of Neversoft, decided this would be an opportunity to expand the franchise even more. Seeing the popularity of story-related games, specifically things like GTA, they saw opportunity. They wanted to build a true story game with adventure but still have it related back to skateboarding. This would lead to Underground, but this game would also lead to confusion by fans, as this was the first game you could not play as one of the skateboarding superstars like Tony Hawk and his friends. Rather, you were a character who was on a mission to become a professional skateboarder. However, due to the fact that you could go on quests and some of the activities would be seen as illegal, the developer didn't want to allow real people to be able to do them. Neversoft believed in the concept of an expanded plot and would build out this game even further, utilizing face scanning for characters who you would interact with. The developer also took inspiration from real-life areas, studying them extensively to create the most realistic experience possible. What also made this game unique was the fact that they allowed the character to get off their boards and walk around. They would also allow difficulty settings in this game to make it easier for fans. This game was very well received, leading to another Tony Hawk's Underground, but this game would feature the World Destruction Tour, which was being talked about by Tony Hawk and Bam Margera. Essentially, the game was trying to capitalize on the immense popularity of the Jackass-related movies. However, this would lead to some fans being upset, believing that the game had become too far away from the original Tony Hawk's and focused more so on those movies. Learning from this prior mistake, Neversoft was able to build out the open-world video game style of Tony Hawk's American Wasteland, which had more of an actual plot and would be released on the newly created Xbox 360. This game would focus on rebuilding a rundown skate park, adding a much-needed plot for the Tony Hawk games. This game would lead to Project 8 to be released in 2006 again with the open world concept. However, it only seemed to work on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 due to the technology needed. It is also interesting to note that this year they created a secondary game for Wii called Downhill Jam, which was totally different from the other Tony Hawk games. This was due to the fact that it was made for the Wii. It was a very simple game idea where you'd race going downhill around the world. The final Neversoft created game would be Proving Ground, which had a similar concept and was built as Project 8. The goal of this game would be to compete with a new competitor, Skate, which would actually beat the Tony Hawk game in sales, showcasing the fatigue people had from the Tony Hawk franchise. Essentially, due to this, it killed the Neversoft team and Activision would utilize their labor force for other games, eventually leading to the franchise being passed to Robomoto Studios. Activision would work with Robomoto to retool and build out the franchise once again. In 2008, they would not come out with a new game for the main systems. Instead, they built an exclusive spin-off called Motion for the DS. They would build out the game Tony Hawk Ride for 2009, and it would be a complete and total flop. Showcasing the failure and struggles of the Tony Hawk franchise, it would be called the most disappointing game of 2009. They would then attempt to make a sequel called Shred, which again would be a complete failure. They would port these games for mobile devices and handheld game systems. The team tried to get back to their roots with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5, however, it once again struggled to gain success. By 2016, the license would expire with Tony Hawk, and the game would need to be retooled. Realizing the struggles of Activision with the franchise, Hawk began looking for a new avenue. On December 3rd, 2018, Hawk said a game would be released not being published by Activision called Tony Hawk Skate Jam. In 2020, the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 was released and introduced to a new set of fans. The Tony Hawk games completely changed the world of gaming. It allowed games like Matt Hoffman's Pro BMX and SSX Tricky to become very popular on systems. It opened the doors for advancement for video games. The first 4 Tony Hawk games would be extremely popular, with ratings in the 90% range. The game series also helped propel the fame of Tony Hawk and grow his wealth. It is also rumored that he made around $6 million in licensing during his first few years and only grew. It also helped send him into mainstream, allowing him to be featured in different things like movies and shows. Were you a fan of these games? What was your favorite? Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Believable truths!